There's something deeply counterintuitive that Joe Dispenza has discovered through decades of research at the intersection of neuroscience, quantum physics, and human consciousness. The harder you chase something, the more you push it away. The more desperately you want something, the more you signal to the quantum field that you don't have it. The more you need something to happen, the more you create the energetic frequency of lack that ensures it stays out of reach. This sounds paradoxical. We've been taught that success requires hustle, that getting what you want demands relentless pursuit, that desire should drive action. But Dispenza has shown us that this approach fundamentally misunderstands how manifestation actually works. Because you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are being. As Dispenza teaches, when you change your energy, you change your life. But what does this actually mean? It means that every thought you think and every emotion you feel creates an electromagnetic signature that broadcasts into the quantum field around you. This field, which quantum physicists have demonstrated is responsive to consciousness, then organizes itself to match the frequency you're emitting. When you're chasing something, a relationship, money, success, health, recognition, you're operating from a frequency of not having it. Every action you take from this place of lack reinforces the energetic message, I don't have this, I need this, I'm incomplete without this. And the field responds by giving you more experiences that match that frequency. More not having, more needing, more incompleteness. This is why people can work incredibly hard and still not achieve what they want. They're taking all the right actions, but they're taking them from the wrong energetic state. They're hustling from desperation rather than creating from inspiration. They're pursuing from emptiness rather than attracting from fullness, and no amount of action can overcome the energetic frequency you're broadcasting. Think about someone desperately seeking a romantic relationship. They're constantly scanning their environment for potential partners, obsessively checking dating apps, feeling anxious and incomplete when they're alone, putting enormous pressure on every interaction. All of this activity might seem like they're doing something about their situation, but energetically, every action is broadcasting. I'm not whole. I'm lacking. I need someone to complete me. And what does this frequency attract? Either no one at all, or people who resonate with that energy of lack and neediness, people who are themselves operating from incompleteness. The relationship they do find tends to be based on mutual neediness rather than mutual wholeness, and it often becomes exactly the kind of unfulfilling dynamic they were trying to escape by finding someone in the first place. Or consider someone chasing financial success. They're constantly stressed about money, anxiously checking their bank account, feeling panicked about bills, obsessing over every opportunity to make more. They might be working incredibly hard, taking massive action, doing everything right from a practical standpoint. But their energy, their underlying frequency, is one of scarcity, fear, and lack. Dispenza's research has shown that this fearful, stressed energy actually changes your biology in ways that limit your capacity for success. When you're in survival mode, operating from stress and lack, your body is flooded with stress hormones. Your brain shifts into a narrow, limited perception focused only on threat and survival. Your creative centers shut down. Your ability to see opportunities diminishes. You literally become less capable of recognizing and acting on the very possibilities you're desperately seeking. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. When you stop chasing, when you release the desperate need, when you shift your energy from lack to wholeness, everything changes. Not because you've given up, but because you've aligned your frequency with what you desire rather than with the absence of it. This is what Dispenza means when he talks about living from the future you want to create rather than from the past you're trying to change. When you're chasing, you're constantly aware of the gap between where you are and where you want to be. That awareness of the gap is your energetic frequency, and it creates more gap. But when you stop chasing and start embodying the energy of already having what you desire, you collapse that gap at the quantum level. Let me be clear about what this means practically. It doesn't mean you stop taking action. It doesn't mean you become passive or resigned. It means you shift the energetic state from which you take action. Instead of actions driven by desperation, lack, and fear, you take inspired action from a state of wholeness, abundance, and joy. The person seeking a relationship stops chasing and instead cultivates such deep self-love and completeness that they genuinely feel whole alone. They develop such rich inner joy that they no longer need someone else to make them happy. And from this state of wholeness, they naturally attract others who are also whole. The relationship that forms isn't based on mutual neediness. It's based on two complete people choosing to share their fullness. The person seeking financial abundance stops obsessing over lack and instead generates the feeling of prosperity right now, regardless of their current circumstances. They practice gratitude for what they have. They cultivate the emotion of abundance before the material evidence appears. They make decisions from a place of trust rather than fear. And from this elevated emotional state, they begin to see opportunities they couldn't see before, take actions they wouldn't have taken before, and attract circumstances that match their new frequency. This is the science behind what Dispenza teaches. When you elevate your emotional state, when you generate feelings of joy, gratitude, abundance, and wholeness, independent of your circumstances, you literally change your brain chemistry. You shift out of survival mode and into creation mode. Your brain becomes more coherent, more connected, more capable of processing information and seeing possibilities. But more than that, you change the electromagnetic signal you're broadcasting into the quantum field. Dispenza's research has documented actual measurable changes in people's energy fields when they shift their emotional states. And according to quantum physics, this field is not separate from physical reality. It's the invisible infrastructure from which physical reality emerges. When you change your energy, you're not just changing your internal state. You're actually influencing the probability of different potentials manifesting in your life. The quantum field contains infinite possibilities, but which ones actually materialize depends on the consciousness observing and interacting with the field. Your energetic frequency determines which potentials you're aligned with, and therefore which ones are most likely to collapse into your experienced reality. This sounds mystical, but it's based on documented quantum mechanics. The double-slit experiment and countless other studies have shown that consciousness affects matter at the quantum level. Your observation, your attention, your energetic state, these aren't passive. They're actively participating in creating what you experience. So when you're chasing something from a state of lack, you're collapsing potentials that match that frequency of lack. You keep experiencing not having what you want because your energetic state is aligned with not having. But when you stop chasing and start being the frequency of what you desire, you align with different potentials. Ones where you do have it, ones where it flows to you easily, ones where you're already living the reality you've been seeking. Dispenza teaches a specific process for this shift. First, you must become aware of the energy you're currently emitting. Most people are completely unconscious of their energetic state. They're so identified with their habitual thoughts and emotions that they don't realize these patterns are creating their experience. So the first step is simply noticing, I'm in a state of lack. I'm chasing from desperation. I'm broadcasting neediness. Second, you must interrupt the pattern. This means catching yourself in the act of chasing, stopping, and consciously choosing a different state. This is where Dispenza's meditation practices become crucial. Through meditation, you create space between stimulus and response. You develop the capacity to observe your automatic patterns and choose differently. Third, you must consciously generate the emotional state of already having what you desire. This is the key that most people miss. It's not enough to visualize what you want or think positive thoughts about it. You must actually feel the emotions you would feel if you already had it. If you want abundance, you must generate the feeling of abundance now. If you want love, you must cultivate the feeling of being loved now. If you want success, you must embody the emotion of success now. This isn't pretending or denying your current reality. It's consciously choosing to activate the neural networks and emotional chemistry that correspond to your desired state. And Dispenza's research has shown that when you do this consistently, your brain literally can't tell the difference between the imagined future and a lived past. Both create the same neural patterns, the same chemical signatures, the same energetic frequency. Fourth, you must maintain this elevated state long enough for it to become your new baseline. This is where most people fail. They might generate the elevated emotion for a few minutes or even a few days, but then they slip back into the old familiar patterns of chasing, wanting, needing. The old neurological patterns are deeply wired, and the body is addicted to the familiar chemistry of lack and stress. Breaking this addiction requires what Dispenza calls getting uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. When you're in the process of changing your energy, you're literally changing your brain's wiring and your body's chemistry. This feels strange to your system because familiarity is interpreted as safety. Even when the familiar pattern is limiting and painful, your body will resist the new elevated state and try to pull you back to the familiar frequency of lack. But if you persist, if you keep choosing the elevated emotion, keep embodying the energy of wholeness, keep being the frequency of what you desire rather than the frequency of lacking it, something remarkable happens. The new patterns become wired into your brain. The new chemistry becomes familiar to your body. The elevated state becomes your new normal. And from this new energetic baseline, everything changes. Opportunities appear that weren't visible before. People show up who match your new frequency. Circumstances align in ways that seem synchronistic or even miraculous. But it's not magic. It's the natural result of aligning your energy with what you desire rather than with the absence of it. This is why Dispenza says you don't need to chase what you want. You need to become it. You don't need to desperately pursue your goals. You need to embody the energy of already being who you want to be. When you stop broadcasting the frequency of lack and start emanating the frequency of wholeness, abundance, and joy, you become a magnet for experiences that match that frequency. The most profound aspect of this understanding is that it puts you back in the driver's seat of your life. You're no longer a victim of circumstances, desperately trying to manipulate external reality to give you what you need to feel okay. Instead, you recognize that you can generate any emotional state you choose, independent of circumstances. And when you do, circumstances begin to shift to match your internal state. This doesn't mean you'll never take action or work toward goals, but the action you take from this elevated state is fundamentally different. It's inspired rather than desperate. It's creative rather than reactive. It's joyful rather than stressed. And because you're taking action from alignment rather than from lack, the action itself becomes more effective, and the results more satisfying. The paradox is that when you stop needing something to happen, it becomes free to happen. When you release the desperate grip of chasing, you create space for receiving. When you shift from lack to wholeness, you align with the frequency where what you desire can actually reach you. If you've been chasing something desperately, love, money, success, health, recognition, and it keeps eluding you despite all your effort, consider that the chasing itself might be the problem. Consider that your frequency of need and lack might be the very thing keeping what you want at a distance. What would happen if you stopped chasing and started being? What if you generated the feeling of already having it? What if you embodied the energy of wholeness right now, regardless of your circumstances? Write in the comments, "I am the energy of what I desire," and commit to this radical shift from chasing to being, from lack to wholeness, from desperation to magnetism. Share this message with someone who's exhausted from chasing. Your new frequency is waiting. Will you finally embody it?